Welcome to Stillwater Chronicles. Tonight, we settle into a story about a phone call that should have saved her. There is something about a house at night that changes when you are alone in it. The rooms are the same rooms. The walls are the same walls. The furniture sits where it has always sat. The armchair by the window. The lamp on the side table. The kitchen counter with its small scatter of ordinary things. Nothing has moved. Nothing has changed. And yet, there is a quality to silence in a house at night that does not exist in the daytime. It is not simply the absence of sound. It is something thicker than that. Something that presses gently at the edges of things. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat. The soft sound of your own feet on the floor as if those sounds belong to someone else. Astrid had lived in her house for 11 years. She knew its sounds the way you know the sounds of your own body. The particular creak of the third step on the stairs. The way the heating pipes knocked twice before the warmth came through. The low hum. The refrigerator made when the house was quiet enough to hear it. She knew all of it. She had cataloged it, without meaning to, over 11 years of ordinary nights. Which is why, when she heard the sound from downstairs, she knew it was wrong. It was not a loud sound. Not the kind of sound that makes you sit up sharply, heart hammering, breath gone. It was quieter than that, subtler. A sound like weight, like something shifting in a room that was supposed to be empty, like a presence rearranging itself into stillness, just a moment too late. She lay in bed for a moment, listening. The house held its breath. Astrid reached for her phone. It was on the nightstand beside her, exactly where she always left it. Face down, screen dark, the small comfort of its weight in her hand immediately steadying. She pressed the button on the side. The screen lit. 11:43 p.m. She sat up slowly, the duvet falling away from her shoulders, the cool air of the room settling against her skin. She listened again. Nothing. Just the refrigerator's hum, drifting up from the kitchen below. Just the faint, distant sound of wind along the eaves. Just the house. Being the house. She almost put the phone down. Almost. Instead, she dialed 911. It is a strange thing, pressing those 3 numbers. There is a quality to it, a finality, a crossing of a threshold, that makes the moment feel both very small and very large at once. Astrid pressed the numbers and held the phone to her ear and sat very still in the dark of her bedroom, listening to it ring. 1 ring, 2. On the 3rd ring, someone answered. 911. What is your emergency? The voice was calm, professional. Exactly what a dispatcher's voice should sound like. Measured, unhurried, carrying that particular steadiness that is trained rather than felt. Astrid exhaled a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Hi. I'm sorry. I might be being paranoid, but I heard a noise downstairs, and I'm alone. And I wanted to report it, just in case. A pause, shorter than a second. The kind of pause that exists in every conversation, in every phone call, that you would never ordinarily notice. But Astrid noticed it. Of course, the dispatcher said. Can you tell me your address, Astrid? She opened her mouth to answer, then she closed it. She had not given her name. She sat with that for a moment. The phone pressed to her ear. the screen's faint warmth against her cheek, the room around her very still and very dark. She had not given her name. She had not said it. She had simply dialed and spoken. And the voice on the other end had said it back to her, as if it had always been there, waiting. Astrid. The dispatcher's voice again, steady, patient. Are you still there? Yes, she said. And then, how did you know my name? Another pause. This one slightly longer than the last. Your address is registered with the service, the voice said. When you call from a registered number, your information comes through automatically. This was plausible. This was, she told herself, entirely plausible. She had a landline once, years ago, registered to this address. Perhaps her mobile had been linked somehow. Perhaps there was a system she didn't know about. People link things without realizing. It happened all the time. She told herself this. Right, she said. Sorry, my address is 14 Callaway Drive, the dispatcher said. We have it. The room felt colder. Astrid pulled the duvet back around her shoulders without quite deciding to. Her eyes moved to the bedroom door, closed, the thin line of darkness beneath it uninterrupted. She listened. The house was still giving her nothing. Just its ordinary sounds. Just the refrigerator, the wind, the silence that was not quite silence. An officer will be with you shortly, the dispatcher said. In the meantime, are you somewhere safe? I'm in my bedroom, Astrid said. Good. Stay there. Keep the door closed. She already had. She had not mentioned the door. She looked at the door. The thin line of darkness beneath it remained uninterrupted. Still. Even. Exactly as it should be. She studied it the way you study something you are trying to convince yourself is ordinary. The way you stare at a shadow until it becomes just a shadow again. She stared at the line of darkness beneath her door and told herself that she was frightened, and frightened minds fill quiet spaces with things that aren't there. The dispatcher spoke again. While we wait, the voice said. Would you like me to stay on the line with you? Yes, Astrid said. Please. And so the dispatcher stayed. The line remained open. A faint, almost imperceptible hiss of connection, the way all phone lines hiss when you listen closely enough. A reminder that silence on a call is not the same as silence in a room. Astrid sat and listened to that hiss, and it was, in its way, a small comfort. The presence of another voice, even a still one, even a quiet one. She was not sure how long they sat like that. Minutes, she thought. Though time in a darkened room, alone, with a phone pressed to your ear, and a sound you can't explain sitting in your memory like a splinter. Time moves differently then. It thickens. It becomes something you have to move through. She looked at the line beneath the door, and then she stopped looking at the line beneath the door. Because there was something wrong with the line beneath the door. It took her a moment to understand what it was. The line was the same width, the same thin, even darkness. Nothing had changed about its shape or its position. And yet, it was lighter. Not by much, just slightly. Just the faintest suggestion of something on the other side of it that had not been there before. Not a lamp. Not the overhead light. Something lower than that. Something moving, very slowly, very evenly, from one side of the door to the other. Like a torch, like someone walking slowly along the hall. Astrid pressed the phone harder against her ear. "Someone is in the hallway," she whispered. The dispatcher's voice came back immediately, calm as before, steady as before. "That will be the officer," it said. "They've arrived." Astrid did not move. She should have felt relief. That is what she told herself. She should feel relieved now. The officer is here. The officer has arrived. This is over. This is fine. This is exactly what was supposed to happen. She had called. They had come. The story was resolving in the right direction. But the relief did not come, because the light beneath the door had stopped moving. It sat there, that faint, still glow, exactly in the center of the door, not sweeping, not approaching, just present, the way light is present when the thing holding it is standing still and not knocking, standing still and not announcing itself, standing in the hallway outside her closed bedroom door in the middle of the night in complete and total silence. An officer, she told herself, would knock. Astrid, the dispatcher's voice. She realized she had stopped breathing. "Yes," she said. Her own voice sounded farther away than it should. "The officer would like you to open the door." Something moved through her then. Not quite fear. Not quite its opposite. Something in between. A stillness of its own. The way your body goes quiet when it is trying to understand something that the rest of you isn't ready to understand yet. She looked at the light beneath the door. It had not moved. "They're right outside," the dispatcher said. The voice was as calm as it had been from the very first word. As measured, as steady, as professional. Not a note of urgency. Not a note of anything at all. "You're safe. You can open the door." Astrid sat very still. She thought about the sound from downstairs. That small, shifting weight. She thought about her name, spoken before she had given it. She thought about the address, offered back before she had said it. She thought about the door and the instruction to keep it closed, and how that instruction had come before she mentioned the door at all. She thought about the light, an officer who had just arrived, who had just entered a house they did not know, moving quietly through dark rooms toward a woman alone upstairs, would not stand in silence outside a closed door. They would announce themselves. They would call out. They would knock and say their name and say the words that are supposed to make you feel safe. They would not simply wait. They would not simply stand there, holding their light very still, saying nothing at all. Astrid, the voice again. Something in it now. Not urgency. Not quite. More like patience wearing thin. The patience of something that has been waiting for a long time and has decided, quietly, that it has waited long enough. "Open the door." She took the phone from her ear. She looked at the screen. The call timer read 14:27, 14 minutes and 27 seconds. The call was still active. She could see the line was open, the connection live. She held the phone in front of her and looked at it. And then, without fully deciding to, she pressed the red button. The call ended. The light beneath the door went out. She sat in the dark for a very long time after that. The house returned to its ordinary sounds. The refrigerator's hum, the wind along the eaves, the faint knock of the heating pipes. Just the house. Just the sounds she knew. Nothing else. She did not open the door. Not that night. In the morning, when daylight had returned the rooms to themselves, and the night had become something she could almost hold at arm's length, she found the courage to open the bedroom door and walk down the hallway and descend the stairs and move through every room of her house. There was nothing. No sign of entry. No displaced objects. No evidence of anything that had moved or shifted or been touched. Her front door was locked. Her back door was locked. Her windows were closed and latched, just as she had left them. Everything was ordinary. Everything was exactly as it should be. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her phone, and looked up the number for the local police non-emergency line. She asked carefully whether an officer had been dispatched to her address the night before in response to a 911 call. There was a pause on the line, a different kind of pause this time. The pause of someone checking a screen, scrolling through a list, looking for something that should be there. "I'm sorry," the officer said, "but I'm not showing any calls from your address last night. No dispatch. No activity at all." Astrid looked at her phone. She went to her recent calls. There it was. The call, placed at 11:43 p.m., duration 14 minutes and 31 seconds. The number it had connected to was listed plainly at the top of the log. It was not 911. It was her own number. She looked at that for a long time. At those digits, her own area code, her own prefix, the exact sequence she had had for years. She looked at it the way you look at something that your eyes can see, but your mind cannot quite process. The call had gone somewhere. The call had connected. Someone had answered. Someone had known her name. She set the phone face down on the table. Outside, the morning was bright and ordinary. A neighbor's dog barked once, briefly, and then stopped. A car moved slowly along Callaway Drive. Somewhere in the distance, a child was calling out to someone. A high, bright sound, shapeless, with joy. Astrid wrapped both hands around her cup of tea. She did not pick up her phone again for the rest of that day. And when she went to bed that night, later than usual, the lights left on in the hallway. The bedroom door checked twice. The locks verified once more. She lay very still and listened to the house settling around her. Just the refrigerator, just the pipes, just the wind. She did not sleep for a long time, and in the careful, waiting quiet of that dark room, a thought came to her that she could not quite shake. Soft as a whisper, persistent as a splinter. If the call had never connected to 911, if the voice on the other end had always been something else, then whatever had stood outside her door that night had known she would not open it, had waited anyway, had gone when she ended the call without a sound, and had never needed to be inside the house at all. Thank you for listening to Stillwater Chronicles, where even the quietest call can carry a voice that was never quite right. If the stillness stayed with you, if the sound of that line lingered somewhere close, then let it remain a little while longer. Some calls, after all, were never meant to be answered. Rest now, the line is still.